Open this briefcase. $500 million is yours. Alexander Pierce mocked the black Maid's son standing in his Billionaire boardroom, and then the 8-year-old boy cracked it in 30 seconds. Sometimes the children we overlook possess gifts we're too arrogant to see, and sometimes one moment of quiet brilliance can bring an empire to its knees. Before we dive back in, tell us where you're watching from, and if this story moves you, hit subscribe, because tomorrow we've saved something extraordinary for you. Now, let's continue. The boardroom smelled of champagne and cruelty. Alexander Pierce's Billionaire mansion had hosted many things over the years: venture capital bloodbaths, political fundraisers, the quiet endurance of staff who made it all look effortless. But nothing like this. Midnight approached, and a game was about to end. It was 11:47 p.m. when everything changed. Pierce stood at the head of his private conference table, surrounded by the most brilliant minds his connections could summon. The briefcase, burnished brown, titanium-hinged, biometric locked, sat under halogen lights like an artifact in a museum. This was supposed to be his triumph, his theater of dominance over a world he loved to humiliate. Now it was about to become his undoing. In arrogance, fueled by champagne and the high of his latest acquisition, Pierce made an offer that would destroy him. "Open this. $500 million is yours." The room buzzed with excitement. Cybersecurity founders stopped mid-conversation. A former NSA contractor cracked his knuckles. A Vegas escape artist grinned like he'd been handed a gift. But in the corner near the service entrance, barely acknowledged by anyone in the room, stood 8-year-old Malik Carter. Small for his age, wearing a hooded sweatshirt and a blue backpack, his eyes tracking the LED pulses on the briefcase. 1322, the son of Renee, the housekeeper who'd cleaned Pierce's empire for 6 years. The boy Pierce had dismissed as too curious. In the way, the child he'd complained about when Renee brought him during school breaks. "This is a place of business, not daycare." Malik knew how to open the briefcase. He'd seen Pierce stumble through this room 3 nights ago, drunk and ranting, punching in the sequence while bragging to a friend about his unbreakable toy. Malik had been clearing glasses with his mother, invisible in the way children of staff learn to be. He'd watched the drunk billionaire's fingers dance across the keypad. He'd listened to the microtones, high, high, low for a good biometric read, flat, low, flat for partial contact, the faint double tick when 2 conditions synced. He'd memorized it all, not because he wanted to steal anything, because that's what Malik did. He noticed rhythms, patterns, the music hidden in machines. His late granddad Earl had taught him that. "Every lock has manners, kiddo. Listen long enough, it tells you how to be treated." But Malik had learned to stay silent. Pierce had taught him that every time he was told to stop wandering, every dismissive glance when he asked a question, every time his presence was treated like an inconvenience. Until this moment, the experts tried and failed. The NSA contractor listened for clicks, wrong cadence. The hacker counted LED blinks, missed the decoy pattern. The magician made grand gestures about destiny and chose wrong. Pierce was thriving on their frustration, pacing like a predator. The camera crew he'd hired to document innovation culture captured every humiliation. Then Pierce turned toward the staff lined along the wall, his grin sharp as broken glass. "Next? Or shall I invite the help? Maybe they'll have better luck touching real money for once." Renee's jaw tightened. Heat rose in Malik's face. He felt his mother's hand on his shoulder. A warning, a protection, but something in him shifted. "Excuse me, Mr. Pierce," Malik said softly, stepping forward. "Can I try?" The room froze. Every head turned toward the small black boy in the yellow hoodie standing at the edge of the table. Pierce's face cycled through shock, recognition, then something darker. That look Malik knew too well. The one that said, "You don't belong here. You have no right to even speak in this space. But before we see what happens next, you need to understand how we got here. You need to know who Alexander Pierce really is, who Malik and his mother Renee are, and what led to this moment." In a Billionaire boardroom where a child's 30 seconds would topple a fortress. Because this isn't just a story about a locked briefcase. This is a story about years of being invisible, about arrogance mistaking cruelty for power, about a grandfather's lessons in patience meeting a billionaire's addiction to spectacle, and about the moment when listening, not shouting, becomes the most dangerous weapon in the room. Let me take you back to when this briefcase was first commissioned. Back to when Renee first brought her son to work during summer break. Back to the building contempt and the quiet genius that would collide in 30 seconds. This is how it all began. 3 months earlier, Alexander Pierce had always been obsessed with control. At 42 years old, sharp-suited and perpetually suspicious, he'd built his venture capital empire on a simple philosophy. Trust was for suckers, and humiliation was currency. His Bel Air estate sprawled across manicured cliffs, protected by gates that whispered when they closed, cameras that caught every angle, and staff who'd learned to move like ghosts. Inside, the mansion gleamed. Italian marble, museum-grade art, furniture that cost more than most families earned in a year. But for Pierce, it wasn't enough. "I need something no one can crack," Pierce told the German briefcase manufacturer sitting across from him in his private office. "Not my board, not my competitors, not even some hacker with a government contract." The manufacturer, a precise woman with steel gray hair, slid a catalog across the desk. "We specialize in multi-factor security. Biometric, algorithmic, pressure-sensitive. Can you make it one of a kind?" Pierce interrupted. "No duplicates, no backdoors, no manufacturer override codes. If I die, it dies with me." The woman paused. "That's extraordinarily expensive. And if you forget the sequence?" Pierce smiled. "I don't forget. What I need is a spectacle. Something I can show off. Something that proves I'm smarter than everyone else in the room. Can you do that, or should I call someone who can?" She nodded slowly. "We can. But understand, there will be no backup access." Perfect. 2 months and $180,000 later, the briefcase arrived. Pierce paraded it at board meetings like a trophy, daring anyone to try. No one succeeded. That was the point. But Malik Carter wasn't thinking about briefcases the day his ability was born. He was 7 years old, sitting cross-legged on his granddad Earl's porch in South LA, watching wrinkled hands resurrect a transistor radio. "See this solder joint?" Earl said, magnifying glass catching the sun. "It's talking to you. Hear that little sizzle? That's it saying too hot. You gotta listen, not just look." Malik leaned closer. Earl smelled like motor oil and peppermint. His workshop was a shrine to broken things. Radios, watches, pawn shop combination locks lined up like soldiers. Every Saturday they'd choose one. "Map the pattern," Earl would say, spinning a dial with his eyes closed. "Feel the gates catch. Test the edge. Right there, that tiny click? That's the lock saying hello. Now trust your hands." Malik's notebook filled with observations. Not just locks, elevator chimes that went D-flat, G-E, crosswalk beeps that pulsed in triplets. The microwave's done tone that was actually 2 overlapping frequencies. His world was rhythm disguised as noise. When Earl died of a heart attack that winter, Malik kept the notebook. And Renee, grieving but determined, kept the Saturday's Library Maker Labs where Malik soldered LED circuits. Museum-free days where he studied clockwork mechanics behind glass. YouTube channels at midnight, how to pick a master lock, understanding tumbler mechanisms, while Renee folded laundry beside him. Never discouraging, always watching. "You got your granddad's gift," she'd whisper. "Just promise me you'll use it right." Malik promised. 3 nights ago, that promise collided with opportunity. Pierce had hosted a late investor dinner. Renee was clearing dessert plates when the billionaire stumbled in, drunk, dragging a colleague by the elbow. The briefcase sat on the table like bait. "Watch this," Pierce slurred, laughing. 40 engineers couldn't crack it, but I can do it blind. Tap, tap on the lid." A pause, Pierce steadying himself. Then his fingers on the biometric strip, a smug grin as the tone sang high, high, low. The LED rhythm pulsed, 1322, 1322. Pierce punched keys, not random, but synced to the cadence. 4 beats. Then a half-beat lift, gentle, almost tender. The lock sighed open. "Genius," Pierce breathed, snapping it shut. Malik stood 3 feet away. A tray of champagne flutes balanced in his small hands, invisible, watching, listening, memorizing the dance the way Earl had taught him, not with his eyes, but with his ears and the map forming in his mind. Now, in the present, Pierce circled the table with his cameraman, voice rising above the crowd's restless murmur. The noise was static to Malik. He hummed under his breath, Earl's timing waltz, the one they'd used for triple tumbler locks. 1 breath, 2, then Malik stepped forward and placed his thumb. Above the biometric strip, the room inhaled. His thumb descended. Contact, high, high, low. The first LED went steady, glowing green like permission. Wait, Pierce's voice cut through the hush. If the child wants to play genius, let's make it entertaining. He snapped his fingers at the staff. Everyone behind him, line up. I want you all to witness this moment of, what did you call it, son? Trying. Renee moved first, forced forward by Pierce's security. The other housekeepers, the chef, the night manager, all positioned in a row behind Malik like a firing squad in reverse. The image was deliberate. The boy in his yellow hoodie, small against the briefcase, a wall of uniformed anxiety at his back. Pierce grinned at his camera crew. Document this. The help versus $500 million. Phones rose. 3 influencers with million-follower accounts went live simultaneously. Comments began scrolling on held-up screens. This is staged of Don't Let That Baby Fail. Pierce is sick for this. 30 seconds, Pierce announced, tapping his Rolex. Starting now. A venture capitalist near the bar leaned toward his companion. 50,000 says the kid chokes. Laughter rippled. Another guest pulled out her phone to film Malik's face, not the briefcase, his face, hunting for the moment of collapse. But Malik wasn't watching them. He was watching Pierce. There, the tell. Pierce's left hand drifted toward the briefcase lid, fingers drumming twice. Tap, tap, the same unconscious rhythm from 3 nights ago, the prelude to the sequence. Pierce didn't even realize he was doing it. Malik's breathing steadied. He wasn't thinking in numbers. Numbers were arbitrary, invented. He was thinking in intervals, the space between beats, the relationship of one tone to the next. The LED cadence wasn't 1-3-2-2, it was a rhythm, quarter note, dotted eighth, eighth, eighth. And the keypad sequence wasn't digits, it was timing. 2 beats. Long pause. 8 counts. 5, 5, 2, 8, 5, 5 in time, not numbers. Behind him, Renee's hand found his shoulder. She leaned close, her whisper barely audible over the crowd noise and live stream chatter. Breathe. Then she stepped back. Malik's fingers moved to the keypad. First press, 2-beat hold, release, wait. Second press, 8-count interval. Third, 5. Fourth, 5. The LEDs cycled. Green, green, amber, green. The room held its breath. Malik waited a half beat. The lift. The gentle one Earl taught him for pressure-sensitive mechanisms and positioned his fingers above the latch. 1 breath from opening. 1 breath from everything. Malik pressed. The double tick came. 2 microtones overlapping, barely audible beneath the room's held breath. The sound Earl had called the handshake. The moment when every condition aligned and the lock decided to trust you. Malik lifted. The latch released with a mechanical sigh. Centuries of Swiss engineering surrendering to an 8-year-old's careful hands. The lid rose on pneumatic hinges, smooth and inevitable. Total time, 29 seconds. For one crystalline moment, the room existed in absolute silence. 40 people, frozen mid-breath, phone still recording, champagne glasses suspended halfway to mouths. Then chaos detonated. Holy, no way! Did you see that? Camera shutters fired like automatic weapons. The influencers screamed into their phones. A tech founder dropped his drink, ice scattering across marble. The escape artist stood slack-jawed. His brand of impossible suddenly redefined by a child in a cartoon. Hoodie, Pierce went to the corpse pail. His smile stayed stapled to his face, muscle memory from 1,000 board meetings where losing wasn't allowed, but his eyes told a different story. They darted from the open briefcase to Malik, to the cameras capturing everything. Calculating damage in real time. Beginner's luck, he croaked, the words barely audible. But nobody was listening to Pierce anymore. Inside the briefcase, nestled in custom-cut foam, a ledger bound in leather. Its cover embossed with bearer bonds, 500-meter trust. Beside it, a small velvet pouch with what looked like cryptocurrency recovery phrases printed on thick cardstock. 2 slim external drives, labeled in Pierce's own handwriting, Alex, Omega, and underneath everything, a handwritten index card titled Failover Protocol with a list of offshore entity names, bank routing numbers, and transaction schedules. Malik stepped back. his job complete. He wasn't reaching for anything, wasn't claiming victory. He'd opened the lock because that's what locks asked you to do if you listened carefully enough, but others were very interested. A woman in a charcoal suit, Pierce's former business partner, invited to witness his latest innovation theater, held her phone low and steady, camera pointed directly at the briefcase's contents. Her thumb moved across the screen. Zoom, focus, record. Pierce's hired cameraman, operating on pure instinct, pivoted from the briefcase to capture his employer's face at the exact moment fear replaced pride. The mask cracking. The Empire realizing it was naked. Wait! Pierce lurched forward, hands raised. Wait, new rule. The briefcase stays here pending verification, chain of custody, legal protocols. You understand. His head of security moved toward the table. Renee cut between them and Malik, one hand on her son's shoulder, the other held up like a barrier. He opened it, she said quietly. In front of everyone. You said $500 million. Those were your exact words. The contents need to be authenticated, Pierce stammered. This is a sophisticated... He made an offer in front of 40 witnesses. The voice came from the edge of the crowd, a lawyer with silver temples and a calm, measuring gaze. He wasn't shouting. He didn't need to. His words carried the weight of depositions and courtrooms. Verbal contracts are binding in California when consideration is exchanged and terms are clear. Your exact words were $500 million to anyone who can crack this safe. The child cracked it. The clock shows 29 seconds, and every person here, plus 3 live streams, heard you. Pierce's smile finally collapsed. The room waited, breathless. As the billionaire stared at the small boy who'd just opened a door Pierce never meant to unlock. If you're still watching, drop a comment below. Tell us what you think Malik should do next, and make sure you're subscribed because what happens in the next 48 hours will shock you. By 2 a.m., Pierce's lawyers had Renee cornered in the mansion's marble foyer. $2 million, the lead attorney said, sliding papers across a console table, plus a confidentiality agreement. Sign tonight, and this all goes away quietly. Renee didn't touch the pen. Malik stood beside her, backpack on, ready to leave. We don't sell our child's courage, she said. Mrs. Carter, be reasonable. We're done here. As they walked to the staff parking lot, a guest caught up with them. The woman in the charcoal suit. The one who'd recorded everything. How did you know? She asked Malik gently. Malik looked up at his mother. Renee nodded. I listened to the manners of the lock, he said simply. My granddad taught me that everything has a rhythm if you pay attention. The woman smiled, handed Renee a business card, and disappeared into the night. By sunrise, the internet had made its choice. Someone's phone footage, Pierce sneering at the help, then the briefcase popping open to Malik's steady hands, went nuclear. The clip had everything. Class warfare, a child's triumph, a billionaire's humiliation captured in 4K. 30 seconds trended worldwide. Pay Malik flooded comment sections. Pierce became shorthand for arrogant and exposed. Renee's phone exploded. Death threats from Pierce loyalists. Job offers from tech firms. Interview requests from every outlet with a camera. She ignored most of them, shielded Malik from the chaos, but agreed to one, a local station that had covered Earl's community repair workshops. How did you do it? The reporter asked gently. Malik sat beside his mother, hands folded. My granddad taught me to be patient, to listen. That's all. But while Renee protected her son, someone else was listening too. The drives labeled Alex Omega began leaking. Not from Renee, she'd never touched them, but from the woman in the charcoal suit, Pierce's former partner, who'd been waiting years for proof. Emails emerged. Orders to spoof user engagement for investor pitches. Scripts for automated insider trading. Messages threatening founders who refused to sell. A digital paper trail of fraud, manipulation, and calculated cruelty. Tech reporters connected dots. Regulators took screenshots. By Monday morning, the SEC filed an emergency motion to freeze Pierce's assets pending investigation. Pierce scheduled a press conference for Tuesday afternoon, his PR team promising he'd clarify the metaphorical nature of his briefcase challenge. Online, the internet refreshed obsessively, receipts ready. The lock had opened, and it wasn't closing again. Before we continue, hit that like button if you think Pierce is about to get exactly what he deserves. The press conference is about to become legendary. Tuesday, 3 p.m. Pierce stood at a podium in his headquarters atrium, flanked by lawyers and a crisis PR specialist who looked like she'd aged a decade since morning. Cameras packed the space, legacy media, tech bloggers, and at least 6 phones live streaming to millions. "I want to address the misunderstanding regarding last week's innovation exercise," Pierce began, voice steady, rehearsed. The briefcase challenge was always intended as a metaphor for disruptive thinking. The figure I mentioned, 500 million, was symbolic of, behind him, massive screens flickered to life. His own voice boomed through the atrium, crystal clear from party footage. "Open this briefcase. $500 million is yours. Cash equivalent in bearer bonds." "My word on camera, legally binding?" Pierce's face drained. The PR specialist's hand flew to her earpiece. The footage continued. Pierce sneered at the staff. Pierce laughed as experts failed. Pierce's exact words when Malik stepped forward. "If he opens it, he can keep the contents." Sound fair? We all love fairy tale. An investor stood up in the front row, buttoned his suit jacket, and walked out. Then another. Then 7 more. A silent exodus captured by every camera in the room. Pierce tried to recover. "What you're seeing is edited, taken out of context." "Mr. Pierce?" A reporter stood. "The SEC filed an emergency motion this morning. Can you comment on the encrypted drives found in your briefcase? Those are personal. They contain evidence of securities fraud according to leaked documents. Did you know what was in the briefcase when you made your offer?" Pierce's lawyer stepped to the mic. "No further questions." "This conference is..." But outside on the courthouse steps, an SEC attorney was already addressing her own cameras. She was composed, precise, devastating. "We appreciate Mr. Pierce's cooperation," she said, the pause doing all the work. "And we encourage anyone with information regarding the Alex Omega matter to contact our office." The clip went viral before Pierce left the podium. By Wednesday, the collapse was total, assets frozen across 3 jurisdictions. The boards of Pierce Capital and Venture Apex removed him by emergency vote, unanimous. Brand partnerships evaporated, a luxury watchmaker, 2 EV startups, and a celebrity-backed crypto platform all issued identical statements about incompatible values. Pierce's Wikipedia page gained a new section, 2025 Briefcase Incident and Legal Proceedings. But while an empire crumbled, something else was being built. Renee sat in a community center conference room in South LA, surrounded by people who'd shown up when it mattered. The lawyer from Pierce's party, pro bono now. A retired engineer who'd worked with Earl, 2 nonprofit directors. A librarian who'd let Malik tinker after hours for years. "The Carter Lab Initiative," Renee said, writing it on a whiteboard. "Locks, logic, and ethics." They designed it together over coffee and conviction, full scholarships for working-class kids interested in engineering, code-breaking, and ethical technology. Makerspace stipends to buy tools, materials, and time. Transit vouchers so distance never meant denial. And a required ethics module. Earl's principles codified, map the pattern. Test the edge. Trust your hands. Use your gift right. The response was immediate. School librarians from Oakland to Atlanta emailed asking for curriculum kits. Shop teachers sent photos of students who had that same look Malik does. A public university's engineering dean offered Malik a long-term mentorship program. Age-appropriate, no pressure, just access to labs and minds that understood what it meant to hear music in machines. Renee cried reading the messages. Not from grief this time, but from the weight of doors opening everywhere at once. Then Friday evening, a final email arrived. Subject line, confidential settlement proposal, from Pierce's senior legal fixer, the one who negotiated 9-figure exits and made problems disappear. "Mrs. Carter, my client wishes to resolve this matter privately. Walk away from public statements, decline further interviews, and we are prepared to offer a sum that reflects your family's inconvenience. Name your price. Within reason, we can accommodate any figure that ensures mutual silence. This is a one-time offer." Renee stared at the screen for a long moment. Malik was at the kitchen table doing homework, humming something that sounded like the LED rhythm transformed into a melody. She hit reply and typed a single sentence. "Our price is access for every kid." She pressed send, closed the laptop, and went to make dinner. In Bel Air, In an office that used to overlook an empire, a fixer read the response 3 times, then forwarded it to his client with no comment. There was nothing left to say. Share this story if you believe one mother's courage can change the world. And stay tuned because the ending will leave you speechless. 3 weeks later, on a Saturday morning bright with possibility, the South LA Public Library's multi-purpose room was reborn. The space had been many things over the years: a bingo hall for seniors, a polling place, a refuge during the '92 riots. Today it became something new. Above the entrance, a hand-painted banner stretched across the doorway in bold letters: Carter Lab Initiative, Locks, Logic, and Ethics Inside. The transformation was complete. Pegboards lined the walls, loaded with tools donated by hardware stores and estate sales: screwdrivers, calipers, magnifying glasses, wire strippers. Workbenches salvaged from a closed vocational school stood in neat rows. Loaner laptops, refurbished by a tech collective, waited in charging stations. And in the center of the room, mounted on stands like museum pieces, were locks of every kind: combination padlocks, tumbler cylinders, vintage safes with brass dials, even a disarmed car ignition system. But the heart of the room was the mural. It covered the entire back wall. Earl's hands, weathered and strong, frozen mid-repair on a transistor radio. The detail was extraordinary. Every callus, every careful angle of his fingers, the concentration in the gesture. Beneath it, in script that looked like Earl's own handwriting, "Be patient. Every lock has manners." Renee stood before it, hand over her mouth, tears tracking down her face. The artist, a former student of Earl's from decades ago, had painted it from a photo Renee didn't even know existed. "He'd be so proud," the artist whispered. "He already is," Renee said. By 10 a.m., 23 kids filled the space, ages 8 to 15. Some came with parents who worked 2 jobs and heard about scholarships. Others arrived alone on the bus, transit vouchers clutched like golden tickets. A few were shy, hovering at the edges. Many bounced with barely contained energy, hands already reaching for tools. Malik stood at the front workbench, nervous in a way he hadn't been in Pierce's boardroom. This mattered more. "Hey," he said quietly. The room settled. "I'm Malik, I'm 8, and I'm going to show you how to listen to locks the right way." He held up a clear practice padlock, its internal pins visible through plastic housing. "First rule, we never pick locks we don't own or don't have permission to open. Never. This isn't about breaking into places. It's about understanding how things work, respecting boundaries, and using knowledge responsibly." A girl in the front row, maybe 10, raised her hand. "What if someone asks you to pick their lock?" "Good question. You ask why it's locked, who owns it, and if there's another way. If it feels wrong, you say no. Your skills aren't for sale to the highest bidder. They're for solving real problems the right way." He demonstrated the padlock's mechanics, explaining how pins aligned, how tension and feedback worked together. Some kids leaned in, fascinated. Others looked lost. Malik smiled. "Not everyone hears locks the way I do. That's okay. Some of you might be better at codes or circuits or math patterns." He gestured to the other stations around the room. "We've got audio pattern games, matching tones and rhythms, logic puzzles, basic electronics. You don't have to be me. You just have to be curious and patient." The room exploded into motion. Kids scattered to workbenches, drawn to whatever called to them. A boy with thick glasses made a beeline for the circuit station. Twin girls claimed the audio pattern computer, headphones on, already competing. A quiet kid with a notebook sat before a disassembled combination lock, just staring, mapping it with his eyes the way Malik once had. Renee moved through the space as coordinator, answering questions, guiding hands, making sure no one felt invisible. Beside her, 2 co-mentors worked the room. Marcus, a retired aerospace engineer who'd been Earl's friend, taught kids how to read technical diagrams. And Ms. Simone, a music teacher from the neighborhood, ran the audio pattern station, showing students how rhythm was just another form of code, ethics, engineering, listening. The program braided them together like a cable stronger than any individual strand. At lunch, donated sandwiches and juice boxes scattered across tables. The quiet kid with the notebook approached Malik. "I think I heard it," he said, eyes wide. "The lock. It made a little click when I got close to the right number." Malik grinned. "That's the gate." "You're listening." "Keep going." The kid ran back to his station like he'd been given a secret. Renee watched her son, not performing, not proving anything, just sharing what he loved with kids who needed someone to believe they could love it too, and felt Earl's presence so strongly she almost turned to look for him. "You did good, baby," she imagined him saying. "Both of you." Across the city, in a courthouse hallway that smelled of floor wax and consequence, Alexander Pierce walked past a metal detector. He moved slowly, almost shuffling, flanked by lawyers whose retainers could have funded the Carter Lab for a decade. In his hands, he clutched a briefcase. Not the one, that was evidence, sealed in an FBI facility, but a new one, identical except for the absence of a lock. Just a simple latch. He'd bought it the day after the SEC froze his accounts, some desperate attempt to reclaim control, but he couldn't bring himself to open it. Every time he reached for the latch, he saw an 8-year-old boy's steady hands, heard the double tick of his empire surrendering. The briefcase went through the X-ray empty. Pierce didn't notice. That evening, Malik and Renee rode the bus home as the city turned gold in the sunset. Malik leaned against his mother's shoulder, exhausted in the best way, and hummed softly, the LED rhythm, 1-3-2-2. But transformed now, gentled into something that sounded like a lullaby. No longer a code to crack or a challenge to conquer. Just a melody his granddad might have hummed while fixing radios on a summer porch. Renee stroked his hair, watching apartment buildings and taco trucks scroll past the window. "You did good today," she whispered. "We did good," Malik corrected, eyes closed, still humming. She kissed the top of his head and held him closer as the bus carried them home. A fortress fell because a child listened, and a door opened because a mother said no. If this story inspired you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more stories that prove the quiet ones are often the strongest. Tomorrow's story will change how you see the world. See you then.